Hi, I'm Erik Lundgaard.
And I'm Danny Monar.
And today we're going to talk about some key things regarding USP 800. I think these are a key topic coming down the pike in the healthcare industry. And, I think a lot of our viewers really need to understand how this is all going to work. They're going to have a lot of questions relating to this.
Yeah, and so USP 800, it's on the forefront of the pharmacy regulations, and it applies to a lot of healthcare facilities, workers, patients, and just environmental protection in general. And it's dealing with hazardous drugs specifically. So you don't want to be exposing your workers or patients to hazardous drugs outside of what they should be getting. What's prescribed to them. So they initiated this regulation to make sure that people aren't getting sick, and our job is to test those areas and make sure that there's no residues that are going to be exposing people.
And there's a lot of different infographics out there that tell you between cleaning and transport, storing, compounding, the list goes on. And it's really difficult for somebody that may be in the pharmaceutical industry or, oncology or hospitals to take on this whole big compliance package all at once. So, moving from there, and as far as administration and disposal, who does it apply to? I mean, specifically the healthcare workers, the pharmacists. I mean,
Yeah, you just pointed out a bunch of them.
Okay.
I haven't noticed, even veterinary clinics and veterinary technicians are at risk of this. A lot of people don't really think about that. But, we can, go to all of these, even, the normal pharmacy at Walgreens, if they're distributing or compounding these hazardous drugs, they're probably not even thinking about it themselves, and they maybe don't have the safety controls in place to protect their employees.
Yeah, and I would agree with that too, because when you're dealing with a CVS or maybe a hospital or a healthcare facility, and you have a new regulation come down, you kind of have to stop what you're doing, revenue generating activities, and you have to focus on what's important, what's the industry pushing down the pike. And whether it's nurses getting exposed to trace materials of hazardous drugs from vials, or physicians or surgeons or people administrating all that, I think the complexities of teaching people what the exposure areas are, what are some of the different locations they can be exposed to, and maybe some of the sampling locations that would need to be done. So we talked a little bit about the who is exposed and where does it apply, but what entities, like what facilities across the country are specifically going to need to comply with that?
So it's going to be pharmacies, specifically hospitals and other healthcare institutions, patient treatment clinics, physicians' practice facilities. And like I said before, even veterinary offices, they're all going to be, they're all going to have to comply with this regulation here. And then what they must do is to first understand what drugs are listed as hazardous. And you can find a list on NIOSH's website. They have they maintain the list of hazardous drugs, and you can go through all of them. And it goes through anti-neoplastic drugs, as well as non-anti-neoplastic drugs that they could fall under the criteria that they deem as a hazardous drug. And then there's other drugs that affect both male and female reproductive systems.
And I've seen that list. It's freaking long.
Yes.
And so, and if you actually want to know where that list is, you can Google it. So, engineering controls are going to have to kind of put that in place, as well as having a competent personnel, safety practices, using PPE, policies for hazardous drug waste segregation. This is really complex stuff. And so, and when you're, oncology, director of oncology, pharmaceutical, all these different areas, and you jump into this, someone's going to have, their head's going to explode with all what they have to deal with in order to comply.
And that's where we at MSC are going to come in and kind of spell it out for everyone so it's not as confusing or stressful. So like you were saying, each facility will need a competent person that understands what hazardous drugs are in their facility and who's going to be using them. And then dealing with facility and engineering controls, they need to be handling these drugs in a contained area, and that would be in like something like a hood that would be controlling the environment, making sure that any fumes or dust isn't exiting that and contaminating the room that they're in. And then that room actually needs to be contained as well and be negatively pressurized, so if there is a spill, it's not going into adjacent rooms and affecting people outside of that room. And then the personnel that are actually using the drugs, they need to be wearing the proper PPE so that they're not exposing themselves.
Yeah, and I think right now probably a lot of people, maybe whether it's nurses, physicians, any other exposures, I don't really think knew that they were getting exposed to right now unless somebody kind of told them, because a lot of stuff you can't really see any trace, you can't see the liquid, you can't see the little trace elements of hazardous drugs that are being, exposed on the different surfaces. And so, if you don't really know that your exposure is there, and now that this new compliance USP 800 is coming down the pike and actually coming in December 2019, a lot of people are really waking up and being like, okay, what do I got to do to comply? How fast can I do it? Who is the team of people that, can help me, whether we're going to do it internally or we're going to hire a third-party consultant to do that. And you look at the list a mile long, handling drugs in a healthcare facility.
It's always beneficial to have a third-party consultant to do, any sampling, just so there's no bias. But, internal training is always beneficial as well, making sure that your workers understand what hazardous drugs they are working with, and make sure you have strict protocol to make sure that they're, wearing the right PPE and stuff like that. But definitely, the only way that that somebody's getting exposed is if they're showing symptoms, or if we come in and sample and find it at their workstation. And USP 800 actually requires sampling at least every 6 months. So, we can definitely do that and, make sure everything's clean.
Yeah, I think that's a good. We've been getting already inquiries from different companies right now saying, hey, what's the best approach between labs, between, healthcare facilities, hospitals. And as we kind of go into this end of the year and this kind of comes into effect 2019, we're going to be on the forefront of that just to kind of educate people. And so I'm glad that you were here today, Danny. I appreciate your time.
No, it's great. I think this was a good general overview of what USP 800 is, how we can help clients.
The other thing is there's going to be an ASHP conference and trade show that's going to be happening in Mandalay Bay in Las Vegas. We're going to be out there as well. So if you can stop by our booth, and we'll be able to show you some really cool stuff that we got going on. So I'm excited.
Me too.